in which our lovers begin to learn the consequences of their actions. Chapter 15. Though Anna had stubbornly and bitterly persisted in contradicting Vronsky when he told her that their situation was impossible, and tried to persuade her to reveal everything to her husband, in the depths of her soul she considered her situation false, dishonest, and wished with all her soul to change it. Coming home from the races with her husband, in a moment of agitation, she had told him everything. Despite the pain she had felt in doing so, she was glad of it. After her husband left, she told herself that she was glad that now everything would be definite, and at least there would be no falsehood and deceit. It seemed unquestionable to her that now her situation would be defined forever. It might be bad, this new situation, but it would be definite. There would be no vagueness or falsehood in it. The pain she had caused herself and her husband by uttering those words would be recompensed by the fact that everything would be defined, she thought. That same evening she saw Vronsky, but did not tell him about what had happened between her and her husband, though to clarify the situation she ought to have told him. When she woke up the next morning, the first thing that came to her was the words she had spoken to her husband, and they seemed so terrible to her now that she could not understand how she could have resolved to utter those strange, coarse words, and could not imagine what would come of it. But the words had been spoken, and Alexey Alexandrovitch had left without saying anything. I saw Vronsky and didn't tell him. Even at the very moment he was leaving, I wanted to call him back and tell him, but I changed my mind, because it was strange that I hadn't told him at the very first moment. Why didn't I tell him if I wanted to? And in answer to this question, a hot flush of shame poured over her face. She understood what had kept her from doing it. She understood that she was ashamed. Her situation, which had seemed clarified last night, now suddenly appeared to her not only not clarified, but hopeless. She became terrified of the disgrace which she had not even thought of before. When she merely thought of what her husband was going to do, the most terrible notions came to her. It occurred to her that the accountant would now come to turn her out of the house, that her disgrace would be announced to the whole world. She asked herself where she would go when she was turned out of the house, and could find no answer. When she thought of Vronsky, she imagined that he did not love her, that he was already beginning to be burdened by her, that she could not offer herself to him, and she felt hostile to him because of it. It seemed to her that the words she had spoken to her husband, and which she kept repeating in her imagination, had been spoken to everyone, and that everyone had heard them. She could not bring herself to look into the eyes of those she lived with. She could not bring herself to call her maid, and still less to go downstairs to see her son and the governess. The maid, who had been listening by the door for a long time, came into the room on her own. Anna looked questioningly into her eyes and blushed timorously. The maid apologized for coming in and said she thought she had heard the bell. She brought a dress and a note. The note was from Betsy. Betsy reminded her that she had Liza Merkelov and Baroness Stolz, with their admirers Kalushki and old Stremov, coming that morning for a croquet party. Do just come to see it as a study in manners. I'll expect you," she ended. Anna read the note and sighed deeply. "Nothing. I need nothing," she said to Anushka, who kept rearranging the flacons and brushes on the dressing table. "Go, I'll get dressed now and come out. There's nothing I need." Anushka left, but Anna did not begin to dress. She went on sitting in the same position, her head and arms hanging down, and every once in a while her whole body shuddered, as if wishing to make some gesture, to say something, and then became still again. She kept repeating, "My God, my God," but neither the "my" nor the "God" had any meaning for her. Though she had never doubted the religion which she had been brought up, the thought of seeking help from religion in her situation was as foreign to her as seeking help from Alexey Alexandrovitch. She knew beforehand that the help of religion was possibly only on condition of renouncing all that made up the whole meaning of life for her. Not only was it painful for her, but she was beginning to feel fear before the new, never-experienced state of her soul. She felt that everything was beginning to go double in her soul, as an object sometimes goes double in tired eyes. Sometimes she did not know what she feared, what she desired, whether she feared or desired what had been, or what would be, and precisely what she desired she did not know. "What am I doing?" she said to herself, suddenly feeling pain in both sides of her head. When she came to herself, she saw that she was clutching the hair at her temples and squeezing them with both hands. She jumped up and began pacing. "Coffee's ready, and Mamselle and Seryozha are waiting," said Anushka, coming back again and finding Anna in the same position. "Seryozha? What about Seryozha?" Anna asked, suddenly becoming animated, remembering her son's existence for the first time that whole morning. "He's been naughty, it seems," Anushka answered, smiling. "What has he done?" "You had some peaches on the table in the corner room, and it seems he ate one on the sly." The reminder of her son suddenly brought Anna out of that state of hopelessness which she had been in. She remembered the partly sincere, though much exaggerated, role of the mother who lives for her son, which she had taken upon herself in recent years, and felt with joy that, in the circumstances she was in, she had her domain, independent of her relations with her husband and Vronsky. That domain was her son. Whatever position she was in, she could not abandon her son. Let her husband disgrace her, turn her out, let Vronsky grow cool towards her, and continue to lead his independent life. Again, she thought of him with bitterness and reproach. She could not desert her son. She had a goal in life, and she had to act in order to safeguard that position with her son, so that it would not be taken from her. She even had to act soon as possible, while he had not yet been taken from her. She had to take her son and leave. Here was the one thing she now had to do. She needed to be calm and to get out of this painful situation. The thought of a matter directly connected with her son, of leaving with him at once for somewhere, gave her that calm. She dressed quickly, went downstairs, and with a resolute stride entered the drawing-room where, as usual, Coffee and Seryozha with the governess were waiting for her. Seryozha, all in white, stood by the table under the mirror, and his back and head bowed with an expression of strained attention which she knew in him, and in which he resembled his father, was doing something with the flowers he had brought. The governess had an especially severe look. Seryozha cried out shrilly, as he often did, "Ah, Mamma!" and stopped, undecided whether to go and greet his mother, abandoning the flowers, or to finish the garland and go to her with the flowers. The governess, having greeted her, began to tell her at length and with qualifications about Seriosha's trespass, but Anna was not listening to her. She was thinking about whether she would take her along or not. No, I won't, she decided. I'll go alone with my son. Yes, that's very bad, said Anna, and taking her son by the shoulder, she looked at him not with a severe but with a timid gaze, which embarrassed and delighted the boy, and kissed him. Leave him with me, she said to the astonished governess, and, not letting go of her son's hand, sat down at the table where the coffee was waiting. Mamma, I didn't, he said, trying to guess from her expression how he would be punished for the peach. Seriosha, she said, as soon as the governess left the room, that's bad, but you won't do it again. Do you love me? She felt tears coming to her eyes. How can I help loving him? She said to herself, peering into his frightened and at the same time joyful eyes. And can it be that he will join with his father to punish me? Won't he pity me? The tears ran down her cheeks, and to hide them, she got up impulsively and all but ran out to the terrace. After the thunderstorms of the past few days, cold, clear weather had set in. The bright sun shone through the washed leaves, but there was a chill in the air. She shivered both from the cold and from the inner horror that seized her with new force in the fresh air. Go to Mariette, she said to Seriosha, who came out after her, and she began pacing the straw matting of the terrace. Can it be that he won't forgive me? Won't understand that all this could not be otherwise? She stopped and looked at the tops of the aspens swaying in the wind, their washed leaves glistening brightly in the cold sun. And she understood that they would not forgive, that everything and every one would be merciless to her now, like this sky, like this greenery. And again she felt things beginning to go double in her soul. I mustn't think, she said to herself. I must get ready to go. Where? When? Whom shall I take with me? Yes, to Moscow on the evening train, Anyushka and Seriosha, and only the most necessary things. But first I must write to them both. She quickly went into the house, to her boudoir, sat down at the desk, and wrote to her husband. After what has happened, I can no longer remain in your house. I am leaving and taking our son with me. I do not know the laws, and therefore do not know which of the parents keeps the son. But I am taking him with me because I cannot live without him. Be magnanimous. Leave him with me. Up to that point she wrote quickly and naturally, but the appeal to his magnanimity, which she did not recognize in him, and the necessity of concluding the letter with something touching, stopped her. I cannot speak of my guilt and my repentance because... Again she stopped, finding no coherence in her thoughts. No, she said to herself, nothing's needed. And tearing up the letter, she rewrote it, removing the mention of magnanimity, and sealed it. The other letter had to be written to Vronsky. I have told my husband, she wrote, and sat for a long time, unable to write more. It was so coarse, so unfeminine. And then, what can I write to him? She said to herself. Again a flush of shame covered her face. She remembered his calm, and a feeling of vexation with him made her tear the sheet with the written phrase into little shreds. Nothing's necessary, she said to herself. She folded the blotting pad, went upstairs, told the governess and the servants that she was going to Moscow that day, and immediately started packing her things. If you've enjoyed this format, please leave a like and subscribe and return tomorrow for the next chapter.